The roar that would ignite the greatest muscle car war in automotive history erupted from the exhaust pipes of the 1964 1.2 Ford Mustang on April 17, 1964. Lee Iacocca watched with satisfaction as the sporty pony car that Ford had rushed to market became an instant sensation, selling 100,000 units in its first 4 months while leaving Chevrolet scrambling to respond to a market segment they hadn't seen coming. But across town at General Motors headquarters, Chevrolet executives were not impressed by Ford's early success. They viewed the Mustang as a cute secretary's car built on economy car underpinnings, lacking the serious performance credentials that real automotive enthusiasts demanded. Chevrolet was about to teach Ford what true American muscle meant. Ford may have surprised us with the Mustang, but they're about to learn the difference between pretty styling and genuine performance, declared Chevrolet Chief Engineer Zora Arkus Duntov as he outlined plans for a Mustang competitor that would embarrass Ford's pony car with superior power, handling, and racing credibility. What began as Ford's attempt to create an affordable sports car would escalate into a 6-year arms race that produced the most powerful street-legal automobiles ever built in America. The Chevrolet versus Ford muscle car war would transform automotive culture, create legends that enthusiasts still worship today, and prove that corporate rivalry could drive innovation to extremes that pure business logic would never justify. The battle lines were drawn: Ford's early market success versus Chevrolet's engineering superiority, affordable performance versus uncompromising power, mass market appeal versus enthusiast credibility. Only one manufacturer would emerge as the true king of American muscle. If you love discovering the untold stories behind automotive history's greatest rivalries, please like this video and subscribe to the Car Chronicles. Ford's Market Surprise. April 1964. The Ford Mustang's introduction on April 17, 1964, caught the entire automotive industry off guard with its combination of sporty styling, affordable pricing, and broad market appeal. Lee Iacocca's vision of a car that looked expensive but cost less than $2,500 created a new market segment that didn't exist before Ford invented it. The Mustang's immediate success was unprecedented in automotive history. Dealers reported customers literally fighting over available cars, while Ford struggled to increase production fast enough to meet demand that exceeded their most optimistic projections by enormous margins. The Mustang proved that American customers were hungry for something different from the big, expensive cars that dominated showrooms, recalled Ford marketing executive Chase Morsey. Lee Iacocca understood that young customers wanted sporty styling and performance they could actually afford, not just dream about. The Mustang's formula was brilliant in its simplicity. Take proven mechanical components from existing Ford models, wrap them in distinctive sporty bodywork, and offer enough customization options to let buyers create their ideal performance car within reasonable budgets. However, the early Mustang's performance capabilities were modest by serious enthusiast standards. The base model came with an economical inline-six engine, while even the optional V8s were tuned for reliability and fuel economy rather than maximum power output. Chevrolet executives initially dismissed the Mustang as a marketing gimmick that would appeal only to secretaries and hairdressers who prioritized appearance over genuine automotive performance. They believed that serious performance customers would always prefer Chevrolet's proven muscle car offerings. General Motors' official response to the Mustang was slow and bureaucratic, reflecting corporate confidence that Ford's success was temporary and that GM's superior engineering resources would eventually prevail when they decided to compete directly. However, younger engineers and designers at Chevrolet were more concerned about Ford's early success and began developing concepts for a Mustang competitor that would demonstrate Chevrolet's superiority in performance engineering and racing heritage. The Mustang's cultural impact extended far beyond automotive sales to influence fashion, music, and lifestyle trends associated with youth, freedom, and American optimism during the mid-1960s. Ford had created more than just a car. they had captured a cultural moment. Chevrolet's engineering response, 1965–1966. Chevrolet's response to the Mustang was characteristically thorough and engineering-focused, emphasizing performance capabilities that would embarrass Ford's styling-focused approach to the pony car market. General Motors assigned their best engineers to create a Mustang competitor that would demonstrate clear technical superiority. The Camaro development program, initially codenamed Panther, was designed from the ground up to be a serious performance machine rather than an economy car dressed up with sporty styling. Chevrolet engineers insisted on proper chassis engineering, sophisticated suspension systems, and engine options that prioritized power over economy. "We weren't trying to copy the Mustang. We were trying to embarrass it," explained Chevrolet engineer John DeLorean. Ford had created a market for sporty cars, but they hadn't created genuine performance cars. Chevrolet was going to show them how it should be done properly. The engineering differences between the Camaro and Mustang approaches were substantial. While Ford emphasized cost control and manufacturing efficiency, Chevrolet invested in suspension technology, chassis rigidity, and engine development that prioritized performance over profit margins. Chevrolet's racing heritage provided advantages that Ford couldn't match through engineering alone. GM's experience with Corvette development and racing programs gave them sophisticated understanding of performance requirements that Ford lacked in their rush to market. The Camaro's engine development program was particularly ambitious, with plans for multiple high-performance options that would establish clear superiority over Ford's more conservative power plant offerings. Chevrolet intended to win the horsepower war decisively. However, Chevrolet's thorough approach required more development time than Ford's expedited Mustang program had needed. While Ford sold hundreds of thousands of Mustangs, Chevrolet engineers continued refining their response, leading to mounting pressure for faster development. General Motors' corporate culture favored engineering excellence over speed to market, creating internal tensions as Mustang sales success continued growing while Chevrolet's competitor remained in development. Marketing executives demanded faster responses while engineers insisted on proper development time. The delay in Chevrolet's response gave Ford nearly 3 years of unopposed market dominance, allowing Mustang to establish dealer networks, customer loyalty, and cultural associations that would be difficult for any competitor to overcome, regardless of engineering superiority. September 29, 1966. The Camaro strikes back. Chevrolet's 1967. Camaro introduction on September 29, 1966, was designed to demonstrate everything that Ford's Mustang was not: serious engineering, uncompromising performance, and credible racing capability. The Camaro represented Chevrolet's declaration that the pony car wars were about to become much more serious. The Camaro's performance specifications immediately established its superiority over comparable Mustang models. Chevrolet's base V8 engine produced more power than Ford's optional performance engines, while the Camaro's top performance options offered horsepower levels that Ford couldn't match. The Camaro showed that Chevrolet had been listening to serious performance customers rather than just marketing surveys, observed automotive journalist Carr and Driver. This was a real performance car that could compete with Corvettes, not just a pretty economy car with sporty styling. The Camaro SS, with its 396 cubic-inch big block V8 engine, produced 375 horsepower, making it significantly more powerful than any Mustang variant available at the time. Chevrolet had decisively won the first round of the horsepower war. However, Ford's 3-year head start in market development proved difficult to overcome despite Chevrolet's technical advantages. Mustang had established customer loyalty and dealer relationships that protected Ford's market position even against superior competition. The automotive press recognized the Camaro's engineering superiority while acknowledging Ford's marketing advantages. Road test comparisons consistently favored the Camaro's performance while noting the Mustang's broader market appeal and established reputation. Chevrolet's racing intentions for the Camaro were immediately apparent through special performance packages and racing homologation specials that demonstrated the car's serious competition capabilities. Ford's Mustang racing efforts seemed amateur by comparison. The Camaro's introduction marked the beginning of the true muscle car wars, as both manufacturers understood that their corporate reputations were now tied to performance supremacy in a market segment that was becoming increasingly important to young customers. Customer response to the Camaro was enthusiastic among performance enthusiasts, while more mixed among general market buyers who preferred the Mustang's established styling and broader dealer network. Chevrolet had captured the serious performance market while Ford retained mass market dominance. 1967–1968. The arms race escalates. The competition between Camaro and Mustang intensified dramatically during 1967–1968 as both manufacturers escalated engine offerings, performance packages, and racing programs in pursuit of supremacy that became more about corporate pride than market logic. Ford responded to the Camaro's power advantage by developing the 428 Cobra Jet engine package that finally gave Mustang enthusiasts the horsepower they needed to compete with Chevrolet's big block offerings. The horsepower war had officially begun. Chevrolet countered Ford's engine improvements with the legendary 427 cubic-inch L88 option that produced over 430 horsepower and was clearly designed for racing applications rather than street driving. GM was willing to offer truly exotic power plants to maintain performance leadership. Both companies were building engines that were completely impractical for normal driving just to prove they could build the most powerful cars, recalled engineer Bill Mitchell. The rivalry had reached the point where engineering logic was secondary to winning the horsepower war. The escalating performance war created increasingly expensive and specialized vehicles that appealed to smaller customer bases but generated enormous publicity and brand credibility that influenced sales across both manufacturers' entire product lines. Racing competitions between Camaro and Mustang became proxy wars for corporate supremacy, with both manufacturers investing heavily in Trans Am racing programs, drag racing development, and other motorsports activities designed to prove superiority over their rivals. Street racing culture exploded during this period as young customers used Camaros and Mustangs to settle manufacturer loyalty disputes through illegal but popular street competitions that further fueled the rivalry between Ford and Chevrolet enthusiasts. The automotive press encouraged the rivalry through constant comparison tests that pit the latest Camaro variants against comparable Mustang models, creating public scoreboards that influenced corporate decisions about future performance development programs. Insurance companies began responding to the escalating performance war with higher premiums for high-performance models, creating economic pressure that limited the market for the most powerful variants while encouraging manufacturers to develop even more extreme options. The cultural impact of the muscle car wars extended far beyond automotive enthusiasts to influence fashion, music, and social attitudes associated with American youth culture during the late 1960s social revolution. 1969. Peak power and market reality. The 1969 model year represented the absolute peak of the Chevrolet versus Ford muscle car war, with both manufacturers offering engine options that produced over 400 horsepower while abandoning any pretense of practicality or fuel economy in pursuit of ultimate performance bragging rights. Chevrolet's 1969 Camaro ZL1 with its aluminum 427 engine produced an estimated 430 horsepower and was essentially a race car sold through Chevrolet dealers. Only 69 units were built, proving that the muscle car war had reached the point of pure engineering exhibition. Ford's response was the 1969 Mustang Boss 429, which stuffed NASCAR's largest racing engine into the Mustang body through modifications that made the car barely streetable, but unquestionably powerful. Ford was matching Chevrolet's commitment to extreme performance regardless of practicality. By 1969, both companies were building cars that were too powerful for their chassis, too expensive for their target customers, and too extreme for normal driving conditions, observed automotive engineer David E. Davis. The rivalry had created magnificent machines that proved engineering could overcome common sense when corporate pride was involved. The market reality was that customers were becoming reluctant to purchase vehicles that required premium fuel, specialized maintenance, and insurance costs that often exceeded the car payments. The muscle car war was becoming economically unsustainable. Government regulation was beginning to target automotive emissions and safety in ways that would make high-performance engines increasingly difficult to certify for street use. The regulatory environment was shifting against the extreme performance that defined the muscle car wars. Both Ford and Chevrolet were privately acknowledging that the horsepower war had reached levels that exceeded customer demand and market logic. But neither manufacturer was willing to appear to retreat from performance leadership while their rival continued escalating. The 1969 model year also saw the introduction of design changes that prioritized styling over performance, suggesting that both manufacturers understood the muscle car war was reaching its practical limits and that market focus would need to shift toward other priorities. Racing success continued to drive corporate investment in increasingly extreme performance options, but sales volumes for the most powerful models were declining as customers chose more practical variants that offered acceptable performance without the penalties of maximum power. 1970. The end of an era. The 1970 model year marked the beginning of the end for the Chevrolet versus Ford muscle car war as insurance costs, emissions regulations, and changing customer priorities forced both manufacturers to retreat from the extreme performance competition that had defined the late 1960s. Insurance industry response to muscle car accident statistics resulted in premium increases that made high-performance models unaffordable for young customers who were the primary target market. The economic foundation of the muscle car war was disappearing. The Clean Air Act and emerging emissions regulations made it clear that high-performance engines would face increasing restrictions that would eventually eliminate the power levels that had defined the muscle car era. Both manufacturers understood that regulatory changes would end the horsepower war regardless of their competitive desires. Chevrolet's 1970 Camaro Z28 and Ford's 1970 Mustang Boss 302 represented the last serious efforts to win the performance war through engineering excellence rather than marketing or styling. Both cars were magnificent, but represented the end rather than the future of American muscle. 1970 was when we realized that the party was over, recalled Ford engineer Larry Shinoda. Insurance costs had made our best cars unaffordable. Emissions regulations were going to kill our engines, and customers were starting to care about fuel economy again. The muscle car war was ending not because we ran out of ideas, but because the world changed around us. Customer preferences were shifting toward smaller, more economical vehicles as fuel prices increased and environmental concerns influenced purchasing decisions. The market that had supported the muscle car war was evolving beyond recognition. Both Ford and Chevrolet began shifting engineering resources toward emissions compliance, fuel economy improvement, and safety enhancement rather than maximum performance development. Corporate priorities were changing to match market reality. The cultural significance of the muscle car war continued influencing American automotive enthusiasm long after the practical competition ended. The cars produced during 1964 to 1970 became legends that defined American automotive performance for subsequent generations. Legacy and modern recognition. The Chevrolet versus Ford muscle car war represents the most successful period in American automotive performance development, creating vehicles that remain benchmarks for power, style, and cultural significance more than 50 years after their introduction. From an engineering perspective, the rivalry pushed both manufacturers to develop technologies and capabilities that influenced automotive design for decades. Innovations in engine development, chassis engineering, and performance optimization that emerged from the muscle car war continued benefiting automotive development long after the competition ended. The cultural impact of the Camaro versus Mustang rivalry transcended automotive enthusiasm to influence American popular culture, fashion, music, and social attitudes during a transformative period in national history. The cars became symbols of American optimism, youth culture, and technological capability. Market development lessons from the muscle car war influenced automotive marketing and product development strategies throughout the industry. The rivalry demonstrated how competition could drive innovation, while proving that market success required balancing performance capabilities with practical customer requirements. Contemporary automotive enthusiasts still debate the relative merits of Camaro versus Mustang variants from the muscle car era, with collector values reflecting ongoing appreciation for the engineering excellence and cultural significance that both manufacturers achieved through their competitive rivalry. The modern continuation of Camaro versus Mustang competition reflects the lasting impact of the original muscle car war, as both manufacturers continue referencing their 1960s heritage while developing contemporary performance vehicles that honor the competitive spirit of their predecessors. From a business perspective, the muscle car war demonstrated both the benefits and risks of unlimited competitive escalation. The rivalry created legendary products while also proving that competition could reach levels that exceeded market logic and regulatory sustainability. The story reminds us that the greatest automotive achievements often emerge from corporate rivalries that push engineering and design capabilities beyond what pure business analysis would justify, creating products that become cultural symbols rather than just transportation devices. If this story moved you, subscribe to the Car Chronicles and hit that like button. Share it with someone who needs to know that the greatest American muscle cars emerged from competitive pride and engineering rivalry that created legends still celebrated today, and that corporate competition can drive innovation to levels that pure profit motives never achieve. What's your favorite muscle car from the Chevrolet versus Ford wars? Let us know in the comments which side you supported and which cars from this rivalry still capture your automotive imagination and enthusiasm.